This is So Life Wants You Dead, a show that explores the intersection of illness, disability, healing, and creativity. 7 years ago, I was told I would need an emergency organ transplant. Before they put me under, I closed my eyes and imagined myself writing. Now, all these years later, I can say that was honestly what saved me. Well, that and a brand new liver. I'm Nora Logan, and this is a podcast on how looking at death helps you live. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to pay tribute to Tanya Ingram, who was our guest for episode 2 and the first person we ever interviewed on this show. Tanya passed away on December 30th, and she will be greatly missed. She was a poet, mental health advocate, and friend to many. We're so grateful to have crossed paths with Tanya, and her words, her work, and the imprint she left on the world will stay with us forever. There is so much to love about Tanya. The love she offered so freely, her generosity, her easy laugh and sense of humor, the way she spoke her poems out, and the way she spoke about her illness and hope. We're so lucky to have known her. A memorial fund has been set up in her honor. We'll put the details in our show notes in case you'd like to donate. In the meantime, revisit her work. Engage with her poems, watch her reading them out. Remember her. On to today's episode. Today we are joined by Matilda Ibini. Matilda is a Nigerian Londoner and an award-winning bionic queer playwright and screenwriter who has Limb Girdle Muscular Dystrophy. Their work often centers women, disabled people, queer people, and the Black British experience seen through a magical realist lens. In this episode, we talk about their work as a playwright and screenwriter, what it was like to grow up with LGMD, their creative process, and their play, Little Miss Burden. Here's the conversation. Welcome to So Life Wants You Dead, Matilda. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So you have limb girdle muscular dystrophy,
Yeah.
which started to become apparent with some physical impairments when you were 5 years old. Can you tell us a bit about your condition and what your road was to diagnosis?
Yeah, I'll try and give like a summarized version.
Yeah.
Because the real journey was about 8 years long. So I'd later find out that I've probably always had muscular dystrophy and that the first 5-ish years of my life, it just took a while for symptoms to present themselves, but I probably have always had it. Muscular dystrophy is an umbrella term to describe, at least to my knowledge, at least 60 types of muscle weakening and wasting conditions. And the type that I have is limb girdle muscular dystrophy. So the particular type I have is a disease that affects predominantly your girdle muscles, so your shoulders and your hips, and probably your core muscles. So basically any muscles that help support limb function. And so if those muscles don't work or are affected by this disease that's making them waste away, then you have very limited control over your limbs. And so, yeah, symptoms presented themselves when I was 5. For a long time, not going to lie, people thought I was faking it, putting it on for attention. So the most obvious symptom that I had age 5 was that I walked like a ballerina. Like I walked on my toes and my heels never touched the ground until I had surgery age 13, 14. So I walked on my toes, which also then, as I grew older, forced me to kind of lean forward. So kind of develop something that looked like a hunch. Actually, it did deteriorate quite quickly in the sense that I was losing the ability to get off the floor, especially as a child in the UK. We had lots of assemblies on the floor, so you'd have to get up, and I'd struggle to do that. Then they put me on a bench, and then the bench was too low, so I'd struggle to get up from that. And then they put me on a chair. The chair's still too low, and I'd struggle to get up from that. So there was kind of a clear deterioration as I was getting older. By the time I was 11, 12, when I started secondary school, it was very more pronounced. Like you could very visibly see that I had a limp. I struggled to climb stairs. I was I was really wobbly. Like I always looked unsteady on my feet. Meanwhile, I was having tests, loads and loads of tests. I was being referred from hospital to hospital because they were like, we've done tests and we don't know what's wrong, but we can see there's something wrong. We're going to refer you to this hospital. We don't know what's wrong. We've done our tests. We still don't know what's wrong. We're going to refer you to this hospital. And eventually I was referred to a pediatrics neuromuscular clinic where there's very few. I think at that time there was only 2 clinics in the whole of the UK.
Wow.
Because neuromuscular conditions are often so rare. So then when I was formally diagnosed age 13, they were like, one of the first things we can do is a tendon release, which is to cut the back of my tendon so that my heel could touch the floor, because my heels had not touched the floor since age 5. So they were like, that's one of the first things we could do. However, myself and my mum misunderstood that as thinking that was the cure, that if my heels could touch the ground, then all my problems would be solved. And then after the surgery, little did I know that isn't a cure. It's mainly just to alleviate pain and not cause other kind of spinal injuries when your legs are not forming in the way that they're meant to. So I remember having to go back to school after this really major surgery. Wasn't in school for a good 4 or 5 months, and coming back to school and everyone else thinking it was the cure as well, and then being like, oh, so you still can't do that? Oh, you still can't do that? Oh, you still can't do that? And it's like, yeah, but my feet touch the ground and I can wear shoes that are not orthopedic or specially built, kind of thing. So it was hella disappointing.
You were 13.
Yeah, and this is in the play.
Cruelest. I know.
Yeah.
I know. And in the play, it's so beautifully articulated that you paint that picture. So it's confronting, but it's also your experience of it is so beautiful in a way, like when you wake up from the surgery. And what I don't want to give too much away because I would love people to listen to it, but what the voices of your condition tell you and how you talk back to it. Can you speak a little bit to how you, Matilda, when you woke up from that surgery and then how it felt in that moment to sort of come to that realization?
Yeah. So when I woke up, my casts were bright yellow because my mum knew that was my favorite color. So she'd already picked that out for me. So they were very obvious, and they were from my knee to my foot. So they covered my whole leg. So I didn't get to see my new legs, as it were, for a good, 4 to 5 months. And there was a lot of hope as well. The physios were really optimistic about it, which is kind of what still brought into that thing of that this is somehow the cure, because I was being taught to use a walking frame with the cast, that Matilda having cast shouldn't stop her from walking. So we need to make sure we don't lose the muscle function, and that when the casts eventually come off, you'll be ready to start walking again. And yes, the surgery was successful in the sense that my heels touched the ground. I was able to walk a bit more, with a bit more control, and it wasn't causing back pain anymore. And I wasn't hunched over when I was walking. However, the weakness was still there. Not, all the things that I couldn't do before, I still couldn't do. And I wasn't going to figure that out until they took the casts off. And that's when my legs were really, I remember being because I was 13, I was like, oh my God, my legs are so hairy. Yeah. They've not seen any light. And I remember when my mum was helping me shave my legs and wash my legs. And I was like, oh, this must mean oh no, these are my new legs. I've got to do better with them now than I did before, until finding out that the surgery wasn't to take away all the other things that you can't do. It's just to improve the way that you walk. So it was a stark reality, a kind of reality shock, and it made me dread having that first day back to school. I was like, Mom, is there anywhere I can go to a different school? Can you just teach me at home? Maybe we could get a laptop or a computer and I could learn from home. I just don't want to go back.
Yeah, and that age in particular, kids are relentless.
Yeah, oh my God. It's wild. Like which I'm not afraid to share, that I was bullied from year 7 to year 13. So
Yeah.
that's a long time of not just teasing, I had people steal money by phone, like take advantage of the fact that I can't chase you or fight back or anything like that. So it was very traumatic. And also I went to a Catholic school, so it was even hella judgmental, like more so than your average secondary school. They just felt this extra air of judgment because we're all meant to be Catholics as well.
Yeah, and because you talk about this a bit in your work, this idea, especially in Catholicism, that you somehow, if you're sick or if you're disabled in some way, you're repenting.
Yeah.
Was that part of your experience at school?
Definitely. Sitting in RE class and being told that the reason why disabled people exist or what have you is because they haven't yet repented for their sins, or that why disabled children exist is because they're being punished, or their parents are being punished for their sins. So the idea of, it was pretty negative, basically, the idea of just this constant, you've always done wrong. And growing up disabled, I'd hear very explicitly and also implicitly that like everything I do is wrong. The way that I walk, the way I climb stairs, the way I feed myself, the way I dress myself. No, you're not meant to do it like that. You're meant to do it like this. So it just felt, going to a Catholic school just felt like extra punishment, that, oh yeah, it's right for people to be making fun of the way I walk because I shouldn't be walking like this, kind of thing. And for a long time, there was a lot of like, which I feel like it festered a lot of that. I internalized a lot of that external bullying into kind of internal self-hate, because how else are you meant to kind of combat those narratives where everyone is saying that if you pray more, if you fast more, then you'll be better, and if you're not getting better, it's because you're clearly doing something wrong. Like there must be some kind of, everyone was looking for some kind of deeper meaning as to why was I born this way? What must my parents have done to quote unquote deserve me? When the reality is that disability is just random. It's a part of being human, that we're not all going to be able to do everything for all of our lives. And for some of us, that's much sooner. And for others, it's much later in life. But no one is ever not going to be touched by disability in some way or form. It is just part of being.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful scene in Little Miss Burden, which is the play that we referred to before, that's on BBC Sounds that you can listen to. And it's between you and your mum, and you speak to this. The play is a coming of age tale about your experience.
Yeah.
It's autobiographical. And in the scene, you're saying, well, you know, this God that you speak of, Mum, and the prayers that you've been saying over me for so long, they're not working. And it means that there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And then your mom, of course, says that you're perfect as you are, and that she loves you no matter what. But that projection onto you, especially at such a young age, must have really informed, and like you say, this internalized self-hate, internalized ableism from both a Catholic school, but then the ableist world that we live in. How has, through your writing and through just your own self-work and evolution, how has your perception of your condition changed?
That's a really interesting question. One, I've had a lot of counseling, my God. And there's still a lot that I know I'm yet to even address, and things that I'm going to have to work through. So I know that's kind of like a lifelong journey in some respects. And it may not always be counseling, but some sort of therapy I know I'm going to need because of everything that I've been through, like really, some really, really traumatic stuff that I couldn't even put in the play because that was too dark.
Yeah. You and me both. Therapy for life.
You know? And I think one of the key things that I guess I've learned is, one, I no longer blame myself for my condition. Like, you can't blame yourself for the genetics that you get. Like, that is the reality. I've had to really bring rationale into my life, but not rationale in the sense of just, I've had to bring kind of sometimes what some people might describe as a kind of like a radical compassion, that sometimes you may not understand why, but dealing with the thing can help you move forward, right? That I don't have to, there's never going to be a point where I turn around and be like, oh yeah, I love having limb girdle muscular dystrophy. It's my favorite thing in the world. No, right. I'm always going to hate it. I'm always going to get frustrated at it. However, my relationship to it is that I'm no longer going to punish myself. I'm no longer going to apologize for my existence. I'm no longer going to like live in a kind of regretful way. Like, oh, if I could do this, then I wouldn't be this, or if I could do this myself, then X, Y, Z. I'm kind of more living, okay, this is the reality of my situation. What would make me feel good right now? Or what would help right now? I've had to find the compassion that I can often show to others. I've had to learn to turn that inwards, because I think that's what a lot of the things that I internalized was just out and out like disgust of disabled people, like whether it was depictions that we saw in TV and film, the way that you'd hear people talking about disabled people that they don't know but would see in public. Like a lot of that I internalized because that's one, because we're a kid and we were a sponge, we absorb everything, we're taking in everything, but also realizing a lot of the ableism is steeped in myth. That's not the reality. People have just been kind of taught to think that's real or that's true, when in reality it's not. And I often think sometimes how would my life look if I never discovered writing and storytelling? Because through that, if people, for lots of different reasons, for capitalist reasons, for white supremacist reasons, why the ableist narratives exist, they exist. So then why couldn't I come up with stories that countered those and make those exist?
I think we so often, with that myth that you speak of, we are shown that disabled people are somehow less than human.
Yeah.
And yet when you look at how disabled people live their lives and the art that we create and what the worldviews that people have, it's so colorful, and the humanity is so rich, which is why your work is so important and why it's another way to look at the world, right? You refer to yourself as bionic.
Yeah.
And you write, I adopted the term bionic when I became a full-time wheelchair user and had metal implanted into my leg after a traumatic fracture. Even though the term encompasses my experiences from birth, that I've always needed some form of technology, equipment, or adaptation to live. Can you talk a bit more about the origins of this brilliant term?
Yeah, thanks. I definitely did not coin it. I'm pretty sure I've seen other people, other disabled people describe themselves as bionic or cyborg-like, which I thought was really cool. And also as a kind of fan of sci-fi, I kind of like to think of myself as bionic. But it really came for me, like the clarity of that word came to me when, during a stage where now I'm becoming a full-time wheelchair user, which was really scary to me at the time, actually, because I have been able to walk at least most of my life up until age 25, 6. And yes, slowly, and yes, with a lot of difficulty and with a lot of pain. But that's the only way I've known to exist. And so now all of a sudden I have to use a wheelchair full time, and that's not how I've existed previously. So it was this massive adjustment, and I just kept going back and forth of kind of like, I guess, fearing what will happen, what will the world be like if I can't just one day get out of this chair and climb some steps, or, oh, that place isn't accessible, but I can still climb steps to get in. So it felt like this real change to my way of life, that I'm no longer going to have that option. If something isn't wheelchair accessible, I can't go there, I can't participate or what have you. And I was having a conversation with a friend who was like, well, you've always been somewhat part woman, part metal. Now you've got it physically in you. And even though she said it in a really joking way, it kind of stuck with me, because I was like, wait, hold on. I've always needed walking frames, crutches, leg splints. I've lived a very bionic life. Without those adaptations, I would literally not be able to move, let alone do all the things I've been able to do. So it was kind of like an acknowledgement that I'm bionic, and also the work that I make will always have some kind of bionicness to it, because my work is always informed by my experience, even if I'm not specifically writing about my experience. And I guess it also kind of makes me think of like when, I still identify as a disabled writer, absolutely, but I would never describe my work as disabled or even disability-led. It just is. And even if I'm not always explicitly writing about disability, my work will still be informed by it because that's my lived experience. So I kind of liked using the word bionic to describe the influence, the common denominator in all of my work, which is being physically disabled.
It also I'd be curious to know what you think about this. Because your work is also, there's a lot of magical realism in it, it flows and weaves in really nicely with the idea that it's bionic. Yeah. Is that, do you think about that when you're working on things, or is it sort of mutually exclusive?
A part of me feels like it is mutually exclusive, that my imagination has always been very vivid, very expansive. So like the way that I think and interpret things in the world is often in some kind of magical realist way. It almost feels like the default in my work. But that's really interesting from like, I guess, an outsider perspective, how that could weave into my bionic experience. Yeah.
Well, to go back to your play Little Miss Burden, this is, like I said, a coming-of-age tale that brings together 90s nostalgia, your Nigerian family, growing up in East London, and Sailor Moon, which really spoke to my child's heart. And it tells the sometimes tricky, often funny truth about growing up with a physical impairment. And I was telling you earlier, I've listened to it twice now, and it's such a funny, beautiful piece of work. And I also already told you this, but I love the way you bring in so much amazing 90s music into it, and how you weave in Cleopatra Coming At Ya over and over, which I loved. And also how you go between family life, being a Londoner, being with your Nigerian family, the hospital, and also being at school, which we already talked about. I'm curious to know, when you were in the process of writing this play and then putting it up on stage and then having the recording done for BBC Sounds, did you find that process cathartic? Because it was so closely linked. You talk about your sisters and your mother. They all have massive roles in the play.
Yeah. I'd say in the beginning it was very cathartic when I was just writing it and wasn't aware that it would one day get programmed, or wasn't aware that it would one day become an actual production kind of thing. I think when you're just writing and it's just you and the words, that's where a lot of healing can happen. I think what some of the difficulties I faced was when I realized, this is going to be put in front of an audience. My family's going to see this. Do I want to be dragging these things up that I've long buried, or some things that I've not even yet processed? One of the tips I always advise anyone writing autobiographical stuff is, if possible, have some kind of mental health support in place, because I was, during the process of, not when I first wrote it, but when I realized that when I was starting to write it for performance, that I knew that this was going to be on stage, is when I started seeking mental health support, because dredging up a lot of kind of trauma, and that's the thing as well, I was very conscious that I'm not just writing a play about tragedy, that I'm not saying being diagnosed with a condition or any kind of long-term chronic illness. I'm not saying that there's only pain and suffering after that. I wanted to show that there is light, there is hope, but there is life after diagnosis, right? And I think during that process, I was having basically like nightmares. I was having all the stuff that I'd long buried or didn't want to think about or address started coming up in my dreams. And I was talking about this with my counselor at the time, and we were kind of unpacking things. But she also helped me remember that I don't have to put anything in the play or on stage that I don't want people to know. I actually unlike the things that happened to me, for the sake of telling this on stage, I can actually edit. I can take stuff out. I can not have things go a certain way. I don't have to be 100% factual to what actually happened, especially if that's to protect myself. And that was really freeing. And it was great to have a space where I could have those kinds of almost sometimes like debates with my inner self about, why should we put this in? Or is this too traumatic? Or actually, I personally don't want people to know about this. It's none of their business kind of thing. I think that's where some of also the catharsis could have come through as well. That not that I was rewriting history, but I was getting to tell the story on my terms without any other voices. Like no one saying, oh, but this happened, or don't forget about this. It's like, that doesn't matter. This is my POV. And so, for example, the very, very brief but awkward conversation I had to have with my family about some of the things that were going to be in the play that they may not have been aware of, because those were things that I hid or kept quiet about as a teenager, made sure to give them a heads up, but also say that I'm okay now. That's stopped. That doesn't happen anymore, or have you. And also that the characters in the play are not 100% them, because there are so many people involved in helping me get to where I am today. I couldn't put them all in the play, otherwise it'd be a 10-day play. Like it'd be a saga, right? So a lot of the other people in my life are also in those characters. So you're kind of an amalgamation of lots of different people. This is not how I think of my older sister. This is not how I think of my younger sister. This is not how I just think of my mum. There are lots of different people mixed in with them. And they're just kind of avatars for all those different people. And I also have a younger brother, and he was a little bit pissed that he's not mentioned in the play. But I was like, don't worry, it was about girl power, and it worked and I really like that you picked up on the kind of 90s stuff, because actually growing up Black British in the 90s, a lot of where we saw representation for ourselves wasn't UK television, other than Cleopatra. It was mainly actually in Black girl bands. It was in the American Black girl bands, the Destiny's Child, the 3LW, the TLC, the Sugababes. They were in lots of different girl bands that we were able to see ourselves represented when we often didn't.
Yeah, I love how Sugababes comes up too. I so identify with that, because I'm currently working on a book myself. Of sometimes I'm in the process of writing it, and it'll just feel like it's too much. And also I've had to make some really cutthroat choices, because like you, if I wrote every character into every single person who's helped me, or a community member, friend, family, whoever it is, social worker, then it will be like War and Peace. No one will want to read it. So it's interesting to think about how we have to make choices when telling our story to make it more accessible to people.
Yeah.
And also it speaks to how complicated the experience can be, right? And also how full.
Exactly. And I think writing about ourselves, like, that's often the place to start for any writer. Like, it's not to say that you have to write about your most painful things that have happened to you, but more so, what are your experiences of this world? Because we're all stuck on this planet. So when I'm going through this, what are you doing? What's happening for you, kind of thing.
At the end of the play, you shout out your disabled fam and list a bunch of different rights that disabled people have and should have that have yet to be written into law. Would you be open to reading some of those rights for us from the end of the play?
Yeah, I'll give you like an abridged version just because it is a very long scene.
Yeah, great.
So this is from the scene Rubble of Rubies, which is the very last scene of the play. So it goes, lights up, we're not performing now, we are in the real world, and there are things that need to be said. And throughout this scene, it's a combination of the main character, Little Miss, her older sister, Big Sis, and her younger sister, Little Sis, kind of reeling off all these different rights. So I'll just give you a kind of short snippet. There are rights that have not been written into law yet for people like me, but we know them to be true and just. They may well never be written into law, but they do exist. These rights are yours and you must defend them. But you don't have to do it alone. These rights must be protected. These rights must be uttered. These rights must be heard. You have the right to remain loud and proud. You have the right to take up space on a bus, on a train, on a plane. You have the right to a world built for you and not against you. You have the right to choose your bedtime. You have the right to choose a lifetime. You have the right to just choose and not apologize. You have the right to create dreams, to plant seeds and watch them grow. You have the right to find yourself, feel yourself, see yourself, demand more for yourself. You have the right to just fucking be. You have the right to just fucking be. You have the right to just fucking be.
Thank you for reading that. I think I myself have really struggled with this idea that I'm supposed to somehow perform, I'm supposed to feel grateful, I carry guilt with me. And I've had people even say it to me. I've been crying before in hospital, and I've had someone really well-meaning say to me, your tears should be grateful tears. God is good. Can you talk a bit about this right to just fucking be when the world is telling us we have to be a certain way, or we have to be grateful for the treatment we have, or the support we have, or just, whatever it is that's being kind of thrown at you in whatever moment. How do you grapple with that right to just fucking be?
Well, firstly, I'll be honest that I still get the guilt. I still get the grateful comments. I still get the, you're so lucky to have been born in this country. All of that, and I hope one day people, depending on where people are on their kind of journey with disability, that one day, I don't know if it comes with age or something, or with counselling or something, that there will come a time where you realise it's all just bullshit.
Yeah.
That actually, you don't need permission to be disabled in this world. People just are. You're born like that, or something happens later on in life, and then you become disabled. So becoming disabled is never a choice. Therefore, why should I then need to be grateful for things? We are so, even as the human race or whatever, all that kind of stuff, we're so diverse anyway. There is no one way to be. And I think a lot of the time when I look back, I was just asking, I just want to be myself. Am I allowed to just be myself? So long as I'm not bothering anyone, harming anyone, can I just be? For a long time, I thought I couldn't. I thought I had to be trying to get cured, doing the physios so that I don't get worse or what have you, doing all these surgeries or what have you. And actually, where did that get me? Except more miserable, more depressed, and incredibly anxious. And I think I did get tired at one point, because actually the world is asking a lot from me, or asking me to change my genetics, something I have no control over, when the world is much easier to change than trying to change genetics. Environments are much easier to change than trying to change genetics. So, and I didn't do this alone, definitely not. This is from having a support network. I definitely know that I too have privileges. Having a support network that I can rely on, having access to a care package where carers and personal assistants can provide the support that I need, being able to go to university and that experience, which then kind of set me up for being able to work for myself. I've had all these opportunities that have definitely afforded me privileges. So I'm definitely not aware that not everyone will have access to that or those opportunities. But I think it feels like a culmination of a lot of things that have come together that I've just realized I cannot fucking change my genetics. I couldn't back then, and I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to now. But what I can change is that there are so many things. This world is big enough to allow me to just be. This world is fucking massive. That me just staying the way I am is not hurting anyone.
I love that. As you were talking, I was thinking about how I've had to really cultivate that guilt that I carry around with me too. Cultivate that don't give a fuckism type thing, and it's a daily reprieve. You just have to keep going back to it, because it doesn't just show up one day and say, oh, you're guilt free now. It's like it takes work to really to get to that place.
Yeah.
It's not just you wake up one day and you're like, oh, cool, I'm good.
Even though I didn't really understand it back then, but I definitely understand it now, that I didn't realize that I was diagnosed with something that was going to be so long term, that like this is for the rest of your life, right? And and it almost felt like sometimes I used to think, I wasted so much time just not being, I wasted so much time trying to be someone I could never be, which is a non-disabled person, when actually challenging those kind of internalized ableism, or having the space and support to do so, meant I realized that I could still be a great sister with muscular dystrophy. I could still be a great friend with muscular dystrophy. I could still be a great partner with muscular dystrophy. That none of having muscular dystrophy didn't take away from any of those things, unless I let it to some extent. Because actually that's something about myself that I can never change. It's a permanent thing. So why would I spend so much energy trying to do what scientists are apparently, have spent more long before I was born trying to find a cure for this thing, when actually my energy and time is better spent being a good friend, a good sister, a good person in the community.
And speaking of your sisters, I love the relationship between the sisters in Little Miss Burden. How is your relationship with your sisters and your brother today?
We're very close. Yeah, like I'm second oldest so there's four of us. And we're very close for like four siblings with quite big age gaps. So my older sister is like 5 years older than me. My younger sister's 4 years younger, and my younger brother's 7 years younger. And we have each other's back for sure. They are kind of like they had to become my best friends, because when you just have siblings, you're just like, oh, you're going to be in my life forever, and there's nothing I can do about it because we're related. But actually, we've become like, they are my best friends because of everything that we've been through together in many different ways. And also, they've probably learned a load about muscular dystrophy by having a sibling with a disability. And I'd like to think they've also learned how to care for someone, or rather they learn about caring from a very young age. And maybe that might make them better partners when they find whoever they're looking for, kind of thing. That actually they know how to care more so because they've had to care. They've all had a hand in my care at some point.
Speaking of caring, you've spoken before about your mum and how she was your carer and then transferring out of her care and living on your own. And also she features so heavily in the play. Yeah. She's this incredible Nigerian matriarch. How has both that shift to being more independent been on both your relationships, like for her, but also for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been scary for both of us. Like, she didn't want me to move out, and also a part of me also didn't want to move out, but I had to because the house that she lived in was so inaccessible, and my condition had progressed to a stage where I really needed a wheelchair. And if it wasn't for a very supportive and like a physio who went above and beyond her pay grade to help me make sure I got on the housing register and checked up on me and things like that, because her big thing was that because my mum has so many stairs in the family home, one day I could fall when no one is about and I might not get up again, or I might not be the same when I get up. So that really made it apparent that, actually I don't want anything to happen so bad that I'm a different person. So that really made it apparent that I had to move out. And that whole process, like I feel like that could be an entire podcast series in itself.
You'll have to come back.
Of moving out and, the housing crisis in the UK and also the care worker shortage in the UK. That's a whole other series. But what I can say is that I feel our relationship definitely improved because I moved out. Like, it is a lot for a single mother to be to also be my full-time carer, as well as raising my younger siblings, and be working full-time as well, did start to put a strain on our relationship, and it did start to put a strain on the household, because actually my condition requires constant maintenance, constant monitoring to some extent. That would have only been possible if she gave up work, but she still got 2 younger kids to raise. So it was kind of, again, another privilege of being able to move out into an accessible home. It's not always been easy trying to get the care package that I need or the carers that I need, but it was definitely worth the fight. It was definitely worth the journey, because now my mum just gets to be my mum and not mum and carer. And I know for some people that might not ever be an option, actually, but hopefully there are ways to be able to maintain those familial relationships where they just get to be family. They don't have to, like, they're clued up on how to care for me when there are emergencies or if we go on holiday or what have you, but actually that's my carers' jobs.
Yeah, it changes the relationship back to sort of familial dynamic.
Exactly. And I remember when I first moved out, and my mum would call me like every day. How are you? Are you okay? Have you eaten? What time? Like, what are you doing? That kind of thing. And there would be times where I did need her and she was at work and I would just have to wait. But thankfully those days are long gone. But, you know, there had to be that adjustment where it's okay, Mum, I'm okay. I'm in my flat. I'm in the safest place I could be. And it's accessible. There are no stairs, nothing to trip me up, that kind of thing. So it kind of helped us both grow. And now she feels, which also makes me feel good, because I know I'm very aware growing up that I scared my mum a lot. Like, my condition scared her, which is what I also put in the play.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm quoting my play.
As you should.
That there were times where I could see as a disabled child that I was scaring my mum. And it's not that I was doing anything to scare her. It was just the way that I moved. It was the way that I did things or couldn't do things. And now, for me, there's a little bit more peace and probably less guilt as well, knowing that my mum doesn't call me every day, but she does call every week. That she knows that I am being taken care of and well, and that if there is an issue, she knows that I will come to her, but also knows to trust that I can take care of it.
Well, actually, this is a good moment to shift into talking a little bit about dating. Because, you know, having more independence probably means that you can go into the dating world a bit more. And your microplay, Head Over Wheels,
yes,
it takes a comic view on dating as a disabled person, and I loved it.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about how you came to that project?
Yeah, so that was originally which is what it's called, a microplay. So this, I'd met this director called Lyle Turner, and he runs a film company and a theatre company. So basically they commissioned 5 writers to write micro plays that were going to be performed on stage, and they couldn't be, I think, longer than probably 5-6 minutes, and they had to be about something that felt not necessarily controversial, but that drummed up a conversation. And I remember thinking about, I don't even know how I came to Head Over Wheels, but I just remember thinking I'd not often seen disability and rom-coms. Like, why haven't I seen that? And if I have, it's usually from a male perspective, and it's usually from a straight perspective. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, that might be something if I could write something that was queer and that also had disability, but also wasn't about disability as well. It wasn't about, oh, woe is me, like, oh, I can't find anyone, or that people aren't interested in disabled people. It was actually more like someone who's I wanted to write a character who was very confident and assured in themselves. And I think that's where it came from.
That really comes across in it. The character is very spicy. Did it completely come from your imagination, or was it informed by experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think a bit of both.
Yeah.
Where, I'm not going to lie, it's not that I'm not into dating, but like I kind of treat everyone the same. I don't often pick up on like clues if someone's flirting with me. I'm like, you're going to just have to say it so I know. Otherwise, I'm just going to treat everyone the same kind of thing. And I feel like often I guess what I realized is often when it came to dating, people always want to put everything on the table. Like, oh, and I felt like that for a disabled person, I'm not, even if it was or isn't a date, the first thing I'm not going to do is just like blur out my medical history.
Right.
Like I'd actually like to get to know someone, even people that have become really great friends. It's probably taken a couple of hangouts before they've asked, oh, could I ask why you're in a wheelchair? Because actually get to know me as a person first. And I think with dating, so I guess what I was challenging is that sometimes non-disabled people use dating as a way to like just get medical histories, like, oh, so is it genetic? Can you pass it on to children? They're like, whoa, we've just met. Why are we talking about children and whether or not if I can have them or if, they'll have the same condition as me? Like,
yeah,
actually dating should, in theory, work the same way for disabled people, that you're getting to know the person first. Should it really matter what their condition is? And unfortunately, in the kind of vain ableist society that we live in, everyone wants to know everyone's business. And I'm like, no. So I which is why the conversation that they have isn't about this woman. And actually, the woman, the love interest, walks up to the main character if she has a lighter, because actually those kinds of conversations do happen in real life. And then they end up talking about their past and things like that. And we don't ever bring up the fact that, oh, why are you in a wheelchair? Is that really any of your business unless we're going to bed? Like, really and truly,
yeah.
You do not need to know unless we're shagging. So I think that's kind of, where it came from. And I only had 5 minutes as well. So I was like trying to pack in as much as I could.
Yeah, and it's such a great conversation because it's not about disability. Yeah. It's about the humanity of both people in it.
Yeah, disabled people get horny. We too want to date, want to fuck, want to do this.
Exactly, and I think from the outside, people often desexualize disabled people.
Oh, and infantilize as well. So that, no, disability and sex should never meet or engage. And you're like, oh, your life is boring.
Makes no sense. So you touched on it before a little bit, but how you use humor in your work and how it functions in terms of kind of bringing some levity to what can be a heavy subject. Is it always intentional for you, or is it just your style? Is it just natural?
I think I'd like to say really coolly that it's my style. But I also come from a very funny family and a very funny culture. Like a lot of Nollywood films that I grew up watching are hilarious. Like they use slapstick. Sometimes they're culturally specific. Sometimes they lean into stereotypes. So like, I guess to some extent, there's always been humor in the home and encouragement of humor. So it kind of made sense that it'd find its way into my work. And for me, I guess I'm very hyper aware about the narratives about disability. And it's not to say that I lean into comedy just for the sake of trying to counter those narratives, but the reality, like writing Little Miss Burden, the reality is, as traumatic as some of my childhood is, there are also some incredible moments and some real funny moments. And I feel like, and maybe it's even part of like a coping strategy, that when you go through really dark things, you often develop a dark humor. But I feel like a lot, if not all of my work has some kind of humor in it, just because that's how I see the world. And it's maybe also how I interpret the world, that there are often, yes, very serious, heavy things, but I'm also looking for light and searching for light as well, because I know personally that my life has not all been dark. So I often want to try and play with that balance of heavy and light, or dark and light. Yeah.
And they say that tragedy plus time equals comedy. So I would also say that trauma plus time equals comedy.
Yeah, honestly, like, I'm not even gonna lie, some of my humor is very dark. Like, I do go there in some work, and even just with like some of my really close friends know how dark I can go.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm right there with you, Matilda. So in December of 2021, you wrote an article called Dear Fellow Writer. Would you read an excerpt from that for us?
Yeah. So this was Letters to Fellow Writers, and it was commissioned by Theatre Fahodzi, which is a African-led theatre company in the UK, and they commissioned 5 writers to write letters to fellow writers out there, both in the UK and further away, about. It was specifically about applying or entering the Bruntwood Prize, which is one of the biggest playwriting competitions in the UK. But I think it was also about just reaching out to fellow writers during this time, this isolation. And I guess I kind of interpreted the brief about trying to, even though if you don't always do that, you'll always be a writer, even if no one ever knows that you write or no one ever sees your work. But if you want to make writing a career, you're going to have to kind of take some steps to put yourself and your work out there. So, I'm happy to read a little snippet of it. When deciding to become a writer, it is never an easy decision. It takes a dollop of courage, a heap of hope, and a sprinkle of fear just for good measure. This recipe is a mess, but what I'm saying is that it's not a decision one takes lightly. So if you're at the stage of thinking about it, good. You need thinking time. If you started to take tentative moves to writing or have started putting words to page, even better. It's never a straightforward journey. Irrespective of your reasons for deciding to go on this journey, at some point you'll come to realize that there are many routes in, but not all the routes lead you somewhere better or even different. So I thought I'd share some insights I've learned that may help, or not, you on your way. As you begin this trek, you will notice how some people in this industry get stepping stones. Some people get stepping bridges, whilst others inherit stepping superhighways, meaning your journey to becoming the writer you dream of is not impossible, but you will need to locate, dream, or create your own stepping stones.
I'm curious to know where you are currently on your trek and how you create your own stepping stones. I love that. Some inherit stepping stones, superhighways line.
Yeah. Oh my God. Isn't writing elitist? Oh my God. Like, you spend a lot of time on your own writing for yourself, unpaid, before eventually finding some way to convince someone to pay you to do it. And then you have to do that again and again so that you can keep the lights on and bills paid and food in the fridge.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I've found the secret equation or I've nailed it, but I've certainly found stones that I'm still on and that are sturdy enough to keep me afloat. I guess what some things I'd suggest or have been suggested to in the past were, if you can find a local writers group, if you're interested in writing books, see if there's a local book club. If you're interested in writing plays, see if your nearest theatre has any kind of program or course that they might run. This is specific. I'd say this is more common in the UK, just because often if they receive any kind of public funding, that often means they have to have a kind of outreach arm. What are you doing to engage the public? And one way of doing that is having like playwriting courses. So there's that way. There's also the way that I used to do before in the fuller version of the letter, which is I spent a lot of time in the library, either reading plays or reading how to write play books, and just figuring it out. I think reading plays is a really great way. So like if you're interested in writing books, you should be reading books. If you're interested in writing film, you should be reading screenplays. If you're interested in writing for theatre, you should be reading plays. That's the first thing you should be doing, because if you cannot read or imagine or understand what's written on the page, you're going to struggle to then just go off and do that yourself. as opposed to like you can refer to different play texts, or like I really liked how they wrote this particular scene, or I really liked how they develop character journeys or what have you. So reading a lot in the medium that you're interested in is one good stepping stone. I was fortunate enough that I did a degree in creative writing and English literature, though we only had one module in playwriting and one in screenwriting. So I was fortunate enough that I did a degree in creative writing and English literature, but we only had one module in playwriting and screenwriting in the entire course. So I was very dependent on like finding programs that I could do that were either free or really cheap, or masterclasses or workshops. So I attended as many that I could find, really. Or YouTube is a great resource nowadays. There are thousands of videos from different countries about playwriting and screenwriting. So that you can find hours and hours of videos of how to, in terms of like the format, how do you break down a scene, how do you write a character biography. So like YouTube is a great and free resource. So if you can access YouTube, that's always a good place to look as well. Like I said, because I did a degree and then I managed to get a scholarship to then do a master's in playwriting and screenwriting. So I essentially had 2 years where I just got to write nonsense, like just explore, like, oh, could I write like this? Or could I write like that? So that 2 years was really invaluable to really developing my voice, trying things out, and also being allowed to fail. Because trust me when I say that, like, when you're beginning writing, a lot of the stuff you'll write will be shit. Like, it will be absolute garbage, but
Total shit.
but if you keep going and have patience with yourself, you'll get to that point where your script is more than just readable. It's understandable. People can imagine it. People can see it. And that was it. Through if you're able to find, if you aren't able to find a writing course or program or club, maybe think about starting one. See if anyone else is interested in maybe going to see theatre together or reading plays together and dissecting them. Anything that helps you get to grips with the understanding of the craft, I'd say do it.
I think something that's a misconception often looking from the outside in at creative people is that, and especially writers, because there's all this sort of mythology around writing and how people write,
The golden hours.
Yeah. That a lot of people write for a couple of hours a day and that's it. And and some people write more, but as long as you write and you write every day, you're a writer. Excuse me, let me caveat that. Not every day even. It's you write and you write when you write.
Yeah.
I think some people will say if you write and you write every day, you're a writer, but I think it's actually you write when you write.
I write when I can.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and not sometimes, probably every week there's a day or a time that I can't write. So I have to write when I can. And that has to be good enough. And it is, because it works for me and it still enables me to be able to write to make work, because I don't write just for myself. I'm often writing for performance. I know that hopefully whatever I'm writing will one day be seen by an audience, but even to get to that stage, I have to write when I can, because the reality of my condition is no day is the same. There's one day where the pain is so bad I can't get out of bed, and there are other times where the pain is bearable where I can sit in my wheelchair. Yeah.
So speaking of projects and what you're working on right now, you're working on a film, is that right?
Yes.
Called Caring?
Yes.
Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah, so co-written with my co-writer Gabriel Bissett-Smith, who is also a director, and he'll be directing it. And it's really exciting. We've had some really exciting meetings. Film development is weird and long. I don't think they don't tell us that. They're just like, oh, you find rich people who have money and they give you the money to make your film. That's a lie.
And then it takes 15 years.
It takes so long. And we've been co-writing this for like 6 years now. And we're just finally making some exciting headway. But yeah, so Caring is about a young disabled woman called Tony who finds out her new perfect carer, because good care is hard to find, that her new perfect carer, March, is also a serial killer. And instead of doing the responsible thing like most adults do and would report her to the police, they instead end up tag teaming Thelma and Louise style to take down the local social services.
Oh my God, that's so good. I can't wait to see it.
It's basically a revenge fantasy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll look out for that whenever it comes to fruition.
Thank you.
So I always like to end with 3 questions. And the first one is, if you lived in a world that completely catered to LGMD, what would that look like?
It wouldn't have gravity.
I love that.
We'd all be floating, so there'd be no need for stairs, there'd be no need for pretty much anything. Everything would be accessible to everyone when there's no gravity.
That would be sweet.
Floating and also,
around.
because we're floating, everyone has to move slower. We can't move to the same pace and speed that this capitalist society has us moving at. We'd have to slow down when there's no gravity. You have to take your time.
I love that.
And not rush.
Yeah, and not trip over yourself and try to, just
because things take longer. Yeah, exactly. Because things take longer. You have to take your time, look after yourself. People they're not as stressed when you take your time.
Beautiful. Matilda, what's one thing you do to keep yourself creative each day?
Music. I've got different playlists for different moods, different occasions. I've got different playlists for different projects. Music is one really important thing for me. Because I often, because I'm a massive fan of music videos. So, the music videos of Janet Jackson, Missy Elliott, Beyonce, they're all mini films. They're always so cinematic, or Janelle Monáe.
Oh, yeah.
And so, music often is a really great way just to take me away for a little bit, from our reality or from the stresses of whatever's going on in my life. I can just go away somewhere for however long the song is or however long the playlist is, and just be. I think that's really important in creativity, is also knowing when to stop and to just rest. And
engage with other beautiful things and artists and people like Janelle Monáe who create worlds for us to enter into.
Exactly. I want to get lost in someone else's imagination. Yeah.
And finally, what's one phrase or saying that you always come back to?
Something that my mum says a lot, which is no one knows tomorrow. So even if I've had a shit day, a shit week, a shit month, maybe my mental health isn't great, no one knows tomorrow, what tomorrow may hold, what it may bring. And it's a small thing that she says, but I hold on to it a lot because there's a lot wrong with the world at the moment.
Yeah, and may we just keep hoping that tomorrow's a brighter day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today, Matilda. It's such a pleasure and an honor to speak to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been really lovely.
That was our show, So Life Wants You Dead. Thank you so much for listening. You can engage with Matilda Ibini's work on their website, matildaibini.com, where you can find out about their upcoming film and stage work. I also really encourage you to go listen to their play, Little Miss Burden, on BBC Radio 4. You can find a link to that and more information about them in our show notes. This episode was made in collaboration with and support from Soho House. Many thanks to Jamila Brown, Min Shrimpton, Camilla Weston, Olivia Garrity, Sigal Mohammed, and Erica Bonet. Our illustrations are by Renee Fagan. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave us a review, rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you love us, rating us and subscribing really makes a difference. You can find us on Instagram at So Life Wants You Dead, where you can follow along for updates about the show. Thanks so much, and see you next time.